Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and tonight I'm proud to bring you on Living Mythology, Brian's Drive-In Theater, where we continue our series on creepy carnivals and scary sideshows. Greetings and welcome, Brian. How are you?
I'm well tonight, Hercules. How are you this evening?
I'm doing very well. I'm looking forward to all the wisdom that you have to impart, and I want to see how many of these movies I've actually seen and experience the nostalgia that comes from hearing about them again.
Well, I don't know if you've seen them necessarily, but one of them is set at a New York amusement park that I'm pretty sure you've been to. That setting would be Coney Island. I'm sure you were there numerous times as a kid, right?
Coney Island, yes, my chunks of my TV show filmed at Coney Island too. So,
Well, the one thing while doing research for this topic, and this is our third um, meeting, or a podcast about the topic, that is, it astounded me that for some of these movies, the most interesting part of it for me was the actual physical setting of the carnival. And you got to see the way things were back in the day. And one that I watched today is called Carnival Blood, and it was made in came out in 1970. It stars nobody, and I gotta say, it's supposed to be this horror flick where there's this madman who works for the carnival, and he's killing uh, all of these women who come to his table to win a teddy bear, essentially. And the most notable thing about the cast is that character actor Burt Young is in it, who just passed away a few months ago. Burt Young was probably most famous for being Rocky's trainer in Sylvester Stallone movie Rocky. And he had a long career. I mean, he was in pretty much everything. He did a lot of television. Well, this was his first movie, Carnival Blood, and it it has a whole lot of padding in it, and it could stand for more carnival and more blood, to tell you the truth. But it's kind of a fun movie, and I have it on a two movie set from Something Weird Video. And as you probably know, Something Weird is sort of winding itself down. Mike Rainey passed away, I think, 8 or 9 years ago. It's been a long time ago. And since then, his heirs have been trying to keep the business going, but that must be hard to do. If something is not your vision, but you're responsible for carrying it forward, that can't be easy. You know. And Something Weird is rapidly winding down its DVD inventory. Sadly, as I go through my DVD collection, I'm shocked at how much Something Weird I've got in it. I'm sure you could probably say the same thing.
yes, I can say the same thing, and that does sadden me because it was more than just a brand for DVDs. It was a institution like Trauma is much
Good
more
point.
than some of its movies.
That's a really good point to make. But the movie itself, the thing that, other than just seeing Burt Young in it, who actually is acting, I mean, he's made up to look like a hunchback, but the hunch is not done very well. It just looks like a towel that's kind of in the middle, right behind his neck. His makeup job looks pretty good, though. He looks like he's got scabies or something like that um, on his face. So the makeup job's good, and he's acting. I mean, unlike a few people in the movie, he actually is trying to deliver a good performance. And to tell you the truth, his performance is the best. Which is a low bar to set, I admit, in this film. But you can see this movie on YouTube as well if you don't have access to, and now a used copy from Something Weird. You can see it on YouTube, and it's legitimately there. It's not going to disappear in a few months if you pick the right version of it. It should stay up. But a fun movie if a little slowly plotted. It takes a while for the first murder to happen, and when it does, you're not really sure what happened. Which is true. Um, but for a low budget drive-in movie and something from Something Weird, whoa, You know, some of my favorite movies are from Something Weird, and some of the films I've ever seen. Something Weird.
And there are in many cases indeed something weird that you're watching. So it was aptly named.
Yeah, yeah. He
Your max headrooming,
uh,
and
uh,
now you've frozen. I don't know if you could hear me. I'll pause to see if we can fix this.
you're doing
Yeah, you're moving slightly, but it's frozen and it's coming out in little sounds. I can't hear the conversation.
Oh.
We're back.
Anyway, thank you, Hercules. The problem, I'm sure, was all mine. On my end, I should say. Getting back to director Andy Milligan, Mike Franey from Something Weird Video sort of single-handedly resurrected Andy Milligan from the ashes. Andy Milligan died in obscurity in 1991. He was sort of a guerrilla filmmaker in a sense. He never had enough money to make a movie, and that did not stop him from making movies. Not for a second,
It
which
shouldn't.
is which is amazing if you think about it, because you know the hurdles involved in getting something produced and being able to do it for like practically no money. And Andy Milligan was frequently impoverished, so it's not like he, had his own money to rely on, unfortunately. But he was able to put together a number of films over the course of about 10 years or so. Some of them were pretty rough. A lot of them were horror films. Some of them had more sex in them, but that was kind of a product of the time. In the late 60s and early 70s, it became tough to get anybody to come to see your movie unless there was some nudity in it, because the motion picture production code had been enacted, I think, in 1968, and that kind of paved the way for producers and directors to legally show nudity in films. Made it much easier. It kind of paved the way for them. And I think the nudity that you might see in some of Andy Milligan's films was just a result of that. Andy Milligan himself passed away from AIDS, if I'm not mistaken, in the early '90s. He was a gay man, and was out at a time, in the '60s, and at a time when you just didn't do that. Now he lived in New York, where it was, even then, was much safer. Well, at least much more common. Maybe I should say, not safer, but much more common to be out. But that was kind of an interesting thing back then, because just not very many people were. But anyway, Andy Milligan's movies are kind of interesting to watch because they are so wretchedly cheap. and, and the people who are in it are genuinely trying to act. Some of them can, and some of them not so much. And some of his titles are just great. The Rats Are Coming, The Werewolves Are Here. I think it's a great title. My favorite Andy Milligan film, though, is a movie that actually is kind of creepy if you subtract like the 3 minutes of really bad sex that's in it, and you can't really see anything anyway. It's called The Body Beneath. It's a horror film, and it's very effectively done. And I got to say, the first time I saw it was probably 20 years ago, when I bought the Something Weird DVD that I now own of it. And I was impressed by the end of it because it's genuinely creepy, and kind of it gave me the willies, kind of raised the hair on the back of my neck. So if you're going to watch an Andy Milligan movie, watch The Body Beneath because it's by far his best output, as far as I'm concerned. Some of his movies are fun to watch. Some of them are just, oh my God, they're just unwatchable. He also, I think one of his, maybe his first film or one of his first films was actually shot in a gay bathhouse in New York City in the mid 1960s. And it showed an actual penis at the very end of it, but back then that was, you know, not to be done. So if you do see any copies of it, the penis has been covered up with what looks to be a magic, or not a magic marker, but a Sharpie. It's just kind of, you know, blacked out.
Okay.
Somebody's kind of
I thought somebody was
scribbled.
holding a Sharpie there to block.
Oh no, no, no! Somebody took a sharp on the negative, you know,
Oh,
and
okay.
over it, so you just couldn't see it. Um, but yeah, that's the thing I really miss about Something Weird is that Mike Rainey seemed to really enjoy finding these, you know, horrible, obscure movies, and then oddly enough, you know, found something about them to promote and found an audience for a lot of these films, like Andy Milligan's movies. And if it hadn't been for Mike Rainey, I think a lot of that would be gone now. I don't think, I'm not sure anybody would remember. You have to be able to see it, you know. And Andy Milligan's movies are now old. We're talking about movies that are 55 years old. And age will make anything obscure. I know that from personal experience. A better movie. Actually, it's a
You're freezing again. Let me pause. We're back again.
Have you ever seen a British movie called Circus of Horrors?
It sounds like something I've seen. The title rings bells, but my memory fails me.
Well, I bet you have seen it because it's actually a pretty good movie, to tell you the truth. It Donald Pleasance is in it. Now he's not the star of the movie, and in reality, I think he's only in a couple of scenes. But he's probably the person that you in the cast that it's most likely you would have heard of. I would say. Anton Diffring is in it. He was a German actor who had a he was I don't want to he's not handsome. He's unusual looking. If that I don't think there's anybody else who ever looked like him before. Greg says he's very German looking, but I don't think he means that as a slight. I think he's just trying to. Aryan might be a better. He looks kind of Aryan, to tell you the truth. He's a very good actor though, and he's the star of the movie. Um, it's a really interesting movie too. And if you're a fan of 60s horror films, especially Hammer, Yvonne Romaine is in this in a supporting role. And the plot turns on this. Anton Diffring is a plastic surgeon who runs afoul of the law right after World War II. Now, the movie wasn't released until 1960, but there's a reason that it's set in 1947 to begin with. It eventually moves up to the late 50s, however. But interestingly, he is a plastic surgeon and, you know, one who has incredible skill and can do plastic surgery practically anywhere, including a carnival. So, so, but he's very good at it. And what he does is he finds these people who have been maimed in World War II, so, children whose faces are, you know, mangled and disfigured from bombs, wounds, things like that. And he, you know, makes them whole again, but he has a hold over them, and he tends to like disfigured people who have a criminal background. So he'll find, let's like one of the persons that he finds to work in the carnival that he eventually steals from Donald Pleasance, and then make sure that Donald Pleasance dies being mauled by a really bad bear. And by saying really bad, the bear is just some skinny guy in a costume. It just doesn't look very good. But that's a minor thing in the movie. But Anton Diffring winds up with Donald Pleasance's um, carnival, and also with Donald Pleasance's daughter. Donald Pleasance's little girl has been one of these people who was disfigured in the war, and she's small. She's probably 8 years old or something like that in the film. And Anton Diffring, restores her face and makes her pretty again. And like I said, he could do plastic surgery anywhere, and it is kind of a leap of faith, believing that you can get this quality surgery, in a tent
Carnival.
somewhere. If you could, can you imagine the line of people he would have? But it's a fun conceit in the film as well, because everybody's got this really nasty thing in their past that they don't want getting out. He watches a prostitute murder a John in the street and is so impressed by that he runs and gets her. It's like, hey, I can make your face pretty. And she goes back with him, and sure enough, she winds up as one of the carnival performers.
It sounds
Because,
like John Waters' film.
well, it's a John Waters film with a budget and pretty good actors, to tell you the truth. The acting in it's very well done, and professional, and shot well too. And it's in color, thank goodness. Because uh, there's a lot of color in carnivals, and not that you can't shoot one in black and white, but you don't get to see all of the banners and such, and the neon, if they had it, probably did. But it's fun to see all the colors and such in the carnival settings. And this one is set up. It's not. There are like background shots shot in an actual carnival, but this one isn't set. It's set in a carnival, but it's not being filmed at a carnival. They've got actual sets and a huge big top. And Anton Diffring starts whacking the people that he made whole again by his surgery when they want to leave the carnival and do something else, or if they threaten to blackmail him because he has a murderous past and present in the movie, and he's more or less a serial killer that owns a carnival. It's disturbing when you start thinking about the bodies piling up. And he blackmails everybody. He's a really good villain in this. He's wonderful. He's really good at portraying uh, a really disgusting, hateful person because he is. But it also makes the movie so much fun to watch because he has no morals. He has no code of ethics at all. He will repair a woman's face and then immediately start making out with her. He's just not a nice guy. But rest assured, since it's a British horror movie, he gets his comeuppance in the end. The A woman he had named in the 1940s, who is now a wealthy socialite, um, figures out who he is. He's changed his name, and he's had a couple of people do plastic surgery on him to change his looks. But if you watch the 1947 portion of the movie, all they did was shave his beard. They didn't really. I mean, he looks the same. He has that very striking Aryan look about his face. They didn't change that a bit.
Well,
And anyway, this figured
a
woman.
mustache and a beret are sometimes used to disguise. And Clark Kent just had his glasses, putting his glasses on or off, and
That's true. And maybe a false nose, or Groucho Marx had the grease paint
yes.
mustache, which was so cool. But anyway, Circus of Horrors is a great film to watch. It's got a really interesting British cast in it as well. I mentioned Donald Pleasance, who's great in this movie. He has a really sympathetic portrayal. He's an alcoholic. His daughter has been disfigured. There's no mother around, so we want to assume that she either ran away or died or something like that. And he's a really sad, sympathetic figure, and he does a really good job portraying that. I mean, after a while, a lot of Donald Pleasance's performances kind of devolved into kind of self-parody, really. I mean, he was there to take the check, and God knows I understand that. But in this movie, it's fun to see him acting. He's really good at it as well. One other person to point out in this movie is Jane Hilton. Jane Hilton is her character is in love with Anton Differing, and she and her brother do terrible things to other people, and because he more or less has blackmailed them into it. And Jane Hilton's character is in why I don't know, but she is in love with Anton Differing, even though she sees him murder God knows how many people, and she doesn't seem to fear for her own life, but she should have because she dies in it. One of the most interesting things about her is that she is the female love interest in The Manster, which is a great Japanese British sci-fi movie from the late 1950s. It's one of my favorites, and it's public domain as well. Circus of Horrors is not public domain, sadly. It was released by American International Pictures in the United States as a double feature with The Angry Red Planet, which Greg and I watched just, what was that, Greg? Maybe 10 days ago? It was on Svengoolie. And The Angry Red Planet's not a very good movie, but it looks good. It's shot well, and it has quality actors. The story isn't really there, and it was made very, very cheaply, but it is in color. It was made in 10 days, as
Oh,
a matter
wow.
of fact. Yeah, that's a time is money. And if you can make a movie in 5 to 10 days, you're going to save a lot. Circus of Horrors does not have any cheap elements in it. It was not made in 10 days either. It's actually it's really well done. It's a fun movie. It's one that you used to see on TBS and maybe even late nights because it does have it's more of a crime drama, but it does have some elements of horror in it as well. It's a lot of crime dramas do actually. But a lot of fun to watch. And it's a movie that I think needs to come back around. I think more people need to go back and revisit Circus of Horrors. One last movie I wanted to touch on with the carnival uh, aspect is a Joan Crawford movie from the late 1960s called Berserk, which I'm sure you probably have seen late night horror films or something like that to that effect.
That sounds very familiar too. As you talked about the previous movie, I started remembering bits and pieces of it, so I did see it.
Ah,
So
okay.
I'm sure
Well, Berserk,
when we talk about Berserker.
Berserk is a British movie, and it was sort of in Joan Crawford's hag horror phase. Um, she her last film was Trog, which was shot by Freddie Francis, another British movie. And she decided while she was making the movie, she was on the set thinking, you know what, I think I'm just going to retire. And it was probably the right decision for her to make. Berserk is a much better movie than Trog, however, and it's got a really interesting cast. Ty Harden, who was a heartthrob in the early 60s, and he was Bronco on ABC. He had a Western television show in the early 60s. Very popular for a little while. Made some movies in the early 60s, but by this time his career is starting to ebb a little bit. Diana Dors is in it as well. She was the blonde British bombshell, kind of Britain's answer to. Well, I mean, she was always billed as Britain's answer to Marilyn Monroe, but she's really nothing like Marilyn Monroe at all. I mean, other than just having blonde hair. She's a what? She's well, true. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, they're both female. And she's blonde. But Diana Dors actually was a really good actress. She was good in horror films, particularly as she got on in years. Unfortunately, she didn't live very long. I think she died when she was 52 or 53. She had cancer. You may know this. Her, I believe, second husband was Richard Dawson, who was the MC on the ABC game show Family Feud. He was also on the Goodson Todman game show for years. He was on Match Game 73, 74, and so on. And before that, he was on Hogan's Heroes.
Yes.
Can't remember his on for the whole run. And before that, he was in Munster Go Home. So there. And then Diana Dors, she kind of flirted with A-level stardom there for a while. She didn't make it. And I don't really know why, but she did go pretty far there for a while. She moved to the U.S. in the late 1950s, kind of hoping to make her career bigger and better. And I don't think it really worked out for her. But she did what she could, and she did eventually go back to Britain to make more films like Berserk, as a matter of fact. And Judy Geeson is in this, and she was in every British horror movie, like from 1965 to 1972. I'm convinced. But a very good movie, and Judy Geeson is Joan Crawford's daughter in this. Interestingly, she has a British accent, and Joan Crawford does not. So I don't really know how that happened, but it did. A couple of things about this movie. Joan Crawford owns this carnival, and there's a lot of murders taking place at the carnival. And Joan is probably, I want to say like early 60s here, probably 62, 61, 62 years old, and is dressed in, female carnival barker fetish wear. I mean, she's wearing fishnet stockings. Well, she is. I mean, she looks for 60, whatever. She looks amazing. Now, behind the scenes, Diana Dors said that Joan Crawford didn't really act so much in the movie as just tried to stand there and look good. But she actually does do a good job in this movie, and she does. I think she looks remarkable. She could be 15 years young. Age would lie in this film. She looks great, and she does a good job in it too. No, nobody is a slack at this. Everybody does a good job in Berserk. It's a fun movie too. I recommend seeing it if you haven't seen it so far.
That one I
And
haven't seen, so I'll have to look out for it.
yeah, and if you're a big fan of what is unkindly known as hag horror, and I am, I love horror movies anyway, but seeing once big stars in your favorite horror movies is even better. And that was not the exclusive domain of actresses. A lot of actors did horror films, like Joseph Cotton. Oh my God, I don't know how many he did later in his career. He was a mad scientist, and God knows how many movies. you know,
Was it the same mad scientist or different mad scientists?
always a different mad scientist, but
Okay.
but he did have that role quite a bit. And he actually, Joseph Cotton, who also was a very good actor. Um, I think he found his niche later on in his career by playing villains like that. He was actually pretty good at it. And he's in one of my favorite Vincent Price movies, The Abominable Dr. Phibes. He's the surgeon who has well, he's Dr. Phibes' wife's surgeon who died on the table as he was trying to save her life.
Ah.
I don't know if that brings back the abominable Dr. Phibes to you or not.
No, but I
Um,
know I've seen Dr. Phibes because I remember having conversations about Dr. Phibes. I'm just not remembering it now, but I remember the
okay.
posters too. I like the posters.
Oh, the sets I think for the abominable Dr. Phibes are just fantastic. When they're at Phibes' house, and he has the Clockwork Band that he essentially winds up, and then they all start playing music, and they move like this. Um, the movie is just brilliant. I can still remember seeing it as a child. I begged my parents to take me to go see it because there were ads on TV. I was a big Vincent Price fan anyway. And the radio ads made it sound really scary, and it's not. It's a campy as hell movie, but it's not really scary at all. I guess it was for me as a kid. And all three of us loved it so much that when they came out with the sequel about a year later, we got back in the car, went back to the drive-in, and saw Dr. Fives Rises again.
I remember the sequel coming out, and I remember the poster there too. And again, I was very impressed and wanted to see it.
Well, and the poster art is as tongue-in-cheek as the movie. Um, and it's wonderful and so rare for an AIP, for American International Film, to have a poster that has really anything to do with the actual movie. But the Abominable Dr. Fives does. And clearly the artist for it had to have seen part of the film, if not all of it, because it actually does match the movie really well, I think.
And like you said, that's unusual, but they used to sell the movies based on the poster. That's how they raised
The
funds
title,
for
yeah.
movies. Yeah, you had the title, and then you had the poster, and then people started investing or paying for the parts of it.
I mean, it's smart, but it doesn't always make for great cinema. I
No.
guess that might be the best way to put that one. But yeah, those are some fun. There's some other fun movies that I think that you should check out. If you're interested in horror films with a carnival or amusement park setting, Vampire Circus is a pretty good one as well. And I think it was Hammer, and it involves this traveling circus, and all of the performers in the circus are vampires, and they tend to prey on children in whatever village they go to in order to put on their carnival.
Pros again. Right.
So it's a circus, actually. See if this thing will come
Yeah.
back. Am I any better?
Now you're back. Yes, but you'd frozen a few times.
Okay. Vampire Circus was shot at Pinewood Studios, and that's good for a British movie. Pinewood was Britain's best studio at the time, certainly, and a fun movie if you haven't seen it before. A couple of others to look out for. One of Michael Waterman or Satna's favorite movies, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. It's a fun movie. I think we've talked about it before. It
Mhm.
stars Grant Kramer, who is Terry Moore's son, Terry Moore, the actress. And he looks something like her, actually. And he's gone on to produce and direct films. House of a Thousand Corpses, one of my favorite horror films, has the whole setting at the very beginning of the roadside attraction, and I kind of toss that in as a carnival. And it's sort of carnival-like, adjacent, I guess I should say. And since you're American Horror Story fan, American Horror Story Freak Show, the fourth season of the
Yes.
series, I thought was brilliant. I couldn't wait to watch it every week. It's so much fun. The actors in it were amazing. I don't even know how they did some of the special effects. The scene in it where Jessica Lange's legs are essentially cut off. It's really painful to watch, but I don't know how they did it. I mean, it looked really good. And terrific cast. Um, just a lot of fun. I haven't seen that for a long time. I probably should go back and watch it because I loved it so much. And I've liked some of the other seasons of American Horror Story, but Freak Show was my favorite. Coven was really good too. That was the third season,
I
and I
like.
liked
Oh,
Mhm. I liked Hotel too. I thought it was pretty good.
they lost us with the Messiah time travel episode a little bit, so we stopped watching it regularly after that.
Yeah, kind of same here. Yeah, I kind of got lost there, and I just never went back to it. But everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Uh,
And the middle is usually the best, quite honestly. Oh, excuse me, I'm so thirsty tonight. There are a lot of other films since I'm embarking on vacation. here in the next couple of days. There are some vacation movies that really stand out for me. One of them is a really fun movie. I don't think I've ever talked about a Chevy Chase movie, but National Lampoon's Vacation was so much fun. I loved it. I saw it in the theater. I think I was probably 17 or 18, when it came out. I everything I've ever heard about Chevy Chase insists that he's just a horrible person to deal with. But sometimes he could channel that into a decent performance. And National Lampoon's Vacation, I thought it's brilliant from beginning to end. The Wagon Queen family truckster, the ridiculous looking station wagon that he buys for the family to take to the trip to Wally World. The kids are a lot of fun. Randy Quaid is just terrifyingly brilliant in all of the vacation movies, really. But the first one I think is kind of the best. Although I gotta say, the Christmas Vacation, that's sort of become a holiday favorite of mine over the years. I think Christmas Vacation is pretty well done. It's kind of heartwarming too, And if you can find a comedy that is kind of heartwarming in a sick and twisted way, that's usually going to be a good comedy, I think, anyway.
Not on our Christmas list. We have like Bad Santa and Santa Sleigh, things like.
Oh, I love Santa Sleigh. That is one of my that's one of my favorites. Black Christmas is on our list as well.
Mhm.
That's the Canadian movie from 1974 with Olivia Hussey, Andrea Martin, Keir Dullea, John Saxon, a few other good actors in that movie as well. And it was directed by Bob Clark, who did Porky's, A Christmas Story. Speaking of Christmas films,
Mhm.
And I know A Christmas Story has gotten beaten into the ground over these last probably 30, 40 years or so. But it really is a cute, heartwarming movie, and I think it's extremely well done for what was essentially a small picture. What it wasn't expensive. Um, it was it wasn't it's a period piece, and those tend to be more expensive to produce. It's hard to go back and find the cars and the clothes and furniture and the set pieces that you need to do period pieces like that. And A Christmas Story, I think, is really heartwarming, but cute, really cute movie. And Darren McGavin is awesome in it. He's been a favorite of mine since I was a kid. I loved The Night Stalker. For a whole season, I never missed an episode. I loved the two television movies as well. And seeing him play such a different role, where he's just this cantankerous, frustrated father, uh, completely against anything he'd ever done before, and it just nailed it. He's fantastic in it.
I had a question. Maybe you talked about Vacation.
Mhm.
Uh, that movie came first, I remember, and then Walmart was in the national consciousness. A lot of people call Walmart Wally World, and I couldn't figure out if there's a reason why they do that. But we started hearing that in Pennsylvania when we lived there. It's like, oh, let's go to Wally World. It's like, they have a Wally World here? Yeah, Walmart. And nobody there seemed to know why they call it that. They just called it that because other people called it that. So I wondered if there was some esoteric reason why that was so.
I'm not really sure, but I will say this: we, Greg and I, go to Disney usually for about a week every year,
Uh-huh.
um, and we call it Wally World.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and I'm not referring to Walmart either. I'm actually referring to Disney World.
So Wally
Uh,
World is in the eyes of the beholder, I guess.
I think so. Yeah, yeah. And for some areas, if you live in a small town, Walmart's probably it. You know what I mean?
Yes, I've lived in
Uh,
small towns.
Probably not a whole lot else if you live in a small town. So I guess that would have been for some people that would be Wally World. And you lived in the Poconos, right? When you lived
Yeah,
in
I lived in
Pennsylvania.
Poconos in small towns, and
Yeah.
yeah, Walmart was pretty much the only thing. There was a Kmart across the way. Uh,
Oh,
so we had two of those, but only Walmart was Wally World.
well, I wonder what nickname people had for the Kmart.
They didn't say it in front of me, so I
Ah, okay. Yeah, poor Kmart. When I was a kid, I used to go to Kresge's, the five and dime store,
mhm.
and the K in Kmart is Kresge. Um,
Okay.
and Kresge started as a five and dime back in the 18 whatever. But by the time I was a kid, everything had shifted from away from five and dimes to discount department stores, and that's where Kmart came from.
I learned something new.
And well, I lived in Michigan at the time, and it was headquartered in Troy, Michigan, just in the Detroit metro area at that time. This is before the Sears merger and all that stuff, you know. But yeah, I loved going to Kresge's when I was a kid. It was like Woolworths or Murphy's or any other five dime really. It just depended on what town you went to. Grants, along those same lines.
Yeah, I remember the 5 and 10 cent stores. Now they're $1.25 stores, but back then they were five and dimes.
Well, and even when I was a kid, I'm not sure how much you could have gotten in one of those for a nickel or a dime, to tell you the truth. I liked to go into them because they had a great, if you went downstairs, you had a great toy section for kids.
Yes.
That's also, it's also where the records, the albums and the 45s, they were all downstairs as well. I can still remember what it looked like, it smelled like. And, if you saved up your allowance, you could get a great toy, at Kresge's. Um, and I still have some of those, oddly enough, or sad. I probably should say sadly enough. Um, but yeah, I'm really excited about going on vacation. Um, and we used to, this is something I think Greg's family did as well, but we used to go see a movie while we were on vacation. I don't know if was that something, was that just indigenous to our families, or is that something that you did as a child as well when you traveled?
We used to see movies when we were on vacation. I remember
Okay,
that's
that must have been a family.
more
Okay.
likely to go to a drive-in than when we lived in when we weren't on vacation. Because in New York City, there weren't that many drive-ins or any drive-ins that I could remember. There were tons of
Yeah.
theaters. In one of the neighborhoods where we lived, there were three movie theaters within a couple of minutes walk from each other.
Wow. Boy,
But
that's not the case now.
no, now the drive-ins were when we went to Long Island or somewhere in Jersey or in the Poconos. Wherever we happen to go on vacation, that's when we go to the drive-in movies.
Hmm. Yeah, we used to see whenever we would take a summer vacation as a child, we almost always used to see whatever blockbuster movie or whatever big summer movie was out. Um, I can think of going in several times to see movies. The one that probably stands out, and I think I've talked about this movie before, but one that stands out for me was The Deep because it was so hyped. Jaws had been such a success in summer of 1975, and that was one movie we didn't see on vacation because we had to buy advance tickets to see it.
Uh,
Um, but 2 years later, The Deep was being hyped on television like crazy, and Jacqueline Bisset was in it, and she was, a really big, a actress, back in the '70s. And Nick Nolte was in it, and he was sort of a newcomer, to films at the time, and he was being hailed as this fantastic, wonderful lead. I'm all excited to see this, incredibly scary movie with these great actors in it. Got into the theater. Nothing happened in that movie for 2 solid hours. Nick Nolte, I mean, he's not a great actor. And he's not very good in The Deep, quite honestly. Jacqueline Bisset looks great, but there's not a whole lot for her to do. There should be more for this woman to do in this movie. And there's nothing going on in the movie. I don't know anybody. Nobody has ever said The Deep is my favorite movie. Maybe Nick Nolte said it, but nobody else. It's just not very good.
And synchronistically, the last time I went to the drugstore, they had dollar DVDs there, and so I picked up a bunch of them, and The Deep was in the DVDs that I picked because I don't remember it.
Someone put that movie out on DVD.
Yeah,
Interesting. I've never seen a copy of that movie on DVD. Not
I
that I've looked for it.
from the dollar bin, and chances are now I'm not going to prioritize watching it. So it'll sit.
Well, no, that's my opinion of it. You may love it. I don't think you will.
I don't think I will either.
But I mean, it's shot well. So if you appreciate good cinematography, and there's some underwater sequences that are really shot well, yeah, I mean it's worth watching for that, certainly. But if you're looking for a scary movie, it, it, I even my 12-year-old self was disappointed in that thing. And if you can't entertain a 12-year-old, yeah, you know what I
Yeah,
mean. Yeah, it's like it's back then. So easy to entertain people, period. You didn't have VCRs, you couldn't choose your own television viewing or anything like that. The
mhm.
only way you could do it was to change the channel, and chances are you had to do it manually with your hand like this.
Adjusting the rabbit ear antennas and
Oh, well,
hanger.
we had a television antenna mounted on the roof of our
Ah,
house, and my dad he installed a rotor uh, connected to the antenna, so you could dial in it from the living room. You could dial in a channel, based on where the television station was.
oh,
Um,
awesome.
well, I guess it would freeze up in the winter because ice and snow would make it freeze.
Uh,
So, and there was sort of an ideal position to get the most television channels out of it anyway. And you only really had to rotate it if you were trying to get something from farther away. And in the winter, that was a bad idea because if you got it stuck, then you didn't really get to see anything all that clearly. And you know what? Not that I'm saying that we had it hard or anything, but kids today would never put up with that to watch TV.
no,
They just wouldn't. And they, there's so many things that you can watch now. And gosh, cable, that was a revelation.
I remember
In
cable.
the 70s and 80s, and getting it. I can remember when we got HBO. I was like, ooh, and it was at the time we got HBO, it was only on 12 hours a day because they would show racier films, like sometimes an R-rated film. So it wouldn't even be on from like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. It was just blank, you know. That's how long ago that was. And even then, I think we only got like 10 or 11 channels, and that was with cable.
Yeah, there
It
was
was a long time.
some of the cable channels were a camera in your lobby. I remember if you're living in a building that that had that, so you could turn on your cable TV and see who's ringing your bell. And then they had weird like shows. I remember that were very um, just odd. Um, like they had a guy walking around a camera with a camera in New York City, trying to convince women to take off their blouse on camera. And he filmed this, and it was on one of the cable channels. So there were all these like make it up on the spot theme shows. Some of them very racy, but it was like
Well,
the wild, wild west time of cable.
something about that sounds like Alan Funt in Candid Camera,
Yes,
almost.
it was like Alan Funt, except it was a heavy guy with a camera going around. I forget what his name was.
Wasn't there a naughtier version of Candid Camera in the
Yes, there
80s?
was. What do you say to a naked lady? I think it was called.
Oh, okay, okay. So maybe that's what I'm thinking then. I used to watch Candid Camera, as a child. It was on in syndication,
Yes.
and Betsy Palmer, I think, for a season or two, was one of the co-hosts. Um, and she was an actress in the 50s and a frequent game show panelist. as well. And she's Jason Voorhees' mother in Friday the 13th.
Yes, she is.
And a role that she was embarrassed by initially, but as it turns out, it brought her back to prominence. So it's kind of hard to hate something when you're, now working again,
Right.
I suppose. From what I understand, she and Alan Funt did not get along very well, and that's why she didn't stay with the show. And she seems like, I mean, just I've seen her numerous times in these games did for years. I mean, she was on for probably
Freezing again.
it's 10 o'clock.
There we go.
Anyway, I don't know how we got to Betsy Palmer, but we
But
did.
we did. And it's a good thing. And unfortunately, we're running out of time. But where are you going on your vacation?
We are heading north. We're going to try to escape some of the heat. It has been ungodly hot here this summer.
Here,
So we're going to the Great Lakes.
fantastic. It sounds awesome, and I can't wait to hear all about it. And how can
Yeah.
people find you on the virtual reality?
You can find me at briansdriveintheater.com, where you will find a new movie of the day every day. And that is every day of the week. I also keep the entire site updated and try to bring in new public domain films, or new sources, I should say, for public domain films whenever I can. If you want to interact with me on social media, you'll have to do that through Facebook, because it's the only it's the only platform that I'm currently active on. That may be changing in the future, but for now, it's just Facebook, and you can run a search for Brian Walker or Brian's Drive-In Theater, and it should pop up.
Thank you so very much. Again, thank you for the information, which is always invaluable and always brings me back a long ways to happy places full of strange cinema. And I wish you again a very fun vacation, and I look forward to our next conversation, be it on or off the air.
Okay, sounds great, Hercules. Have a good evening.
You too. Good night, everybody.